Could we have the candidates who are featured come on up and take a seat, and then we'll get started in a little bit? We have water for you.
I know.
What's going on? How are you doing, bud? Good to see you.
We have water for you, but that's, oh, we have cups there. That's okay.
Two choices for the flag.
Probably lots of them around there.
All right. Well, welcome to the League of Women Voters Candidates Night. I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, so if we could, over here. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you. And thank you to our candidates for coming up and being seated. I'm Eileen Litchfield, and Holly Finnan and I are the voter service co-chairman for the League. We've been having these candidates' nights for about 30 years, so we're glad you're here. Any contested candidate who is not being featured on the stage this evening will have an opportunity to introduce themselves after the completion of this portion of the program. And any non-contested as well, as long as you're on the primary ballot. So if we missed you at the door, we'll have you over at this table at the completion of this part of the forum. Tonight's nonpartisan forum is focusing on the 80th and the 84th House District. The candidates will begin the evening with a brief introduction, and then we will be asking them questions, which you may write on the paper there, and there are runners we have from the Business and Professional Women's Group
This is just like
who are
church.
helping tonight, who will pick your questions up and take them to a panel of screeners. Over the years, the League has built a reputation for providing the public with accurate, nonpartisan services and information on elections. The League's voter service activities are designed to provide citizens with unbiased, factual information that can be used as a basis for understanding the election process and reaching their own voting decisions. The League's purpose in sponsoring the Candidates Forum is to stimulate diplomatic, informative dialogue between the candidate and the voter. The purpose of the League is to promote political responsibility through informed and active participation of citizens in government. The League is nonpartisan, and we do not support or oppose any political party or candidate. Tonight, the screeners at the back table are members of the League of Women Voters, and they represent both major political parties. The ushers I pointed out from the Business and Professional Group. Please submit as many questions as you like, but we request that you just put one question per card or per piece of paper. It just makes it easier for the screeners. The timer, Holly is here, will assist the candidates if you'd like to show them with a 2-minute, 1 minute, 30-second, and stop notice. So if you see them cut off midstream, it's because Holly's flashing her signs up there. We'd like to especially thank the American Legion for use of their facility and Bach to Rock for the sound system, as well as Greenville High School Channel 5 Wave for videotaping this evening's program, which will be rebroadcast, and we'll talk about that at the end.
I forgot to see Mr. Tyler Fleming from Wave Channel 5.
Yes, Tyler Fleming from Greenville High School, Wave Channel 5. Thank you for being with us to videotape the evening. And again, you are encouraged to submit questions for our featured candidates, and these will be reviewed. Slanderous questions will be screened out. They may be grouped for similarity or just possibly reworded if there's a couple that are similar, just to make some more clarity, and then they will be brought forward and I will read the question and we'll rotate for the candidates. Mr. Winterregg is running for the 80th House District seat. He did not accept the invitation to come tonight. Each candidate will be given the 2 minutes for an introductory speech and 1 minute for closing remarks. Order of appearance is alphabetical, and the timekeeper will enforce the limit as we mentioned. Each candidate is allowed 1 minute answers. 30-second rebuttals will also be allowed with the candidates, within the candidate's contested race. And since we want to stimulate dialogue between the candidates, any candidate wishing further comment on an issue raised by a question will be allowed to speak and give a 30-second response time. And that is, again, within your race. So since we have all of the state representative candidates here, and Darke County has both House districts covered, we have all of you at once. We will begin with the candidate 2-minute introduction. We'll start with the 80th House District, George Lovett.
Thank you, Eileen. I'm George Lovett from Tip City. I'm running for the 80th House seat. That's all of Miami County and part of Darke. And I tell you, I can't help but grinning. This is like being in church. The front tables, like the front pews in a church, are always open. But thank you all for coming, and thanks to Eileen and the other organizers for putting on this event. I'm George Lovett from Tip City. I'm pretty conservative. I'm pro-life. I'm pro-Second Amendment. I want to get government more efficient to make it smaller so we get our tax bills down. I'm not your normal type of candidate. I grew up in a bait store. When I was 8 years old, my family bought the bait store down the street. I started working there immediately, and I haven't quit working since. I literally sold minnows and worms to pay my way through college. When I came to Miami County in the late 80s, early 90s, a couple wonderful things happened. First of all, I became a father. My daughter's 23. She's out in Los Angeles chasing her dream to be a screenwriter. The second thing is I started a law firm that today has 4 offices. We represent senior citizens on estate planning, nursing home planning, those sorts of things, and we've helped thousands of people doing that. Along the way, I served 8 years on Tip City Council, 2 years as mayor, and I've been on over a dozen nonprofits like Tip City Mum Festival and Rotary. The biggest problem we've got right now, unfortunately, is the opioid crisis. We're losing 14 youngsters a day in this state to opioids. It happened to my 30-year-old niece. She was in a car wreck when she was 20. She got Oxycontin from a doctor. 10 years later, she was dead from heroin. I don't want it to happen to any more families. We have an initiative on the Tri-County Board of Recovery Mental Health that may help here. We've got something called One Wellness Place that's going to put under one roof all the services that addicts need, and we estimate it's going to save over $200,000 a year in operating costs. That's common sense, conservative leadership coming from somebody with a nonprofit and a business background. I'm George Lovett. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you. Our next candidate is John O'Brien, 80th House District.
Thank you. My name is John O'Brien, and most of you probably know me as Bud from my advertising and what everybody else calls me. But on the ballot, it says John O'Brien. I'm in my 3rd term as a Miami County Commissioner. I'm proud of what we've accomplished in Miami County. We have balanced our budgets and during good times and bad times. I'm proud to say that when the recession hit, We didn't raise taxes. We cut $4 million out of the budget to balance the budget. We've also we have the lowest sales tax rate of any county in the area. And when the 911 system needed upgraded, we upgraded it for less than half the original $30 million estimate we were told it would cost us. And we've invested in smart technologies for our buildings and reduced our utility usage by 25%. These are the kind of things conservatives do when they're in office. I'm the only candidate up here who can tell you what I've done as a conservative. But let me tell you a little story about how committed I am to the taxpayers. In 2010, when the census came out, Miami County's population went over 100,000. That meant there was a new elected position in Miami County called the Clerk of Courts of the Municipal Court. I submitted my petitions for that. I was unopposed. No one was running against me. It was my job to be had. That job paid over $30,000 more than I'm making as a commissioner. When a friend of mine told me that you didn't have to have that position, you could combine it with the common pleas clerk of court. At that point, I called Dick Adams and said, we need to do this. So we passed legislation through the House, the Senate, the governor signed it. We eliminated that position, added it to the clerk of courts and the common pleas court, and saved Miami County over $120,000 a year in the process. I ask you today, how many people do you know would have taken a $30,000 pay cut to save the taxpayers $120,000 a year? But that's the kind of conservative I am, and that's how committed I am to the taxpayers. And that's what I'll do in Columbus, representing all of you, whether you're in the 80th or the 84th House District. So I look forward to tonight. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for having this forum, and hope we all have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Jenna Powell, 80th House District.
Thank you guys so much for having me tonight. My name is Jenna Powell, and I am honored to be here in my hometown. So I was born and raised in southern Darke County, and ever since I can remember, I wanted to start my own business. I graduated from Liberty University when I was just 19 years old with my bachelor's in business. I started my first company when I was 17 here in this area, and then I ended up expanding the company to Southwest Florida. I sold that company this past year, and I now co-own and manage the fastest growing outdoor billboard company in the Midwest. We work in over 25 counties. We own over 340 billboards, and I've been able to make deals with hundreds of small businesses across the state. And I've had the opportunity to do this all right here in downtown Greenville. That's where our offices are located. Here in the community, we've elected the same kind of people for years. We've elected politicians and bureaucrats who feel like it's the next notch in their political belt. And for years, what we've seen what this done to our community. We've seen that we have Common Core now. We've seen we have an opioid crisis and high taxes for people here in this community. If elected, what I will do is I will come and bring a new and fresh perspective to the political realm. I believe in fighting for life from conception to natural death. I believe in standing up for your Second Amendment rights. I believe in lowering taxes and cutting regulations, because what we're going to see when we do that is we're going to see families thrive, businesses thrive, churches thrive, and nonprofits. My name is Jenna Powell, and I look forward to meeting all of you.
Thank you. Now we start with the 84th House District, Travis Faber.
If I can get this microphone to not fall down.
Sorry, it's a little
Nope.
bit of a struggle.
The bass, if it's pointing at you, you should pick up your voice. Just try it, see if they can hear you in the back.
Can you hear me? Oh, sorry. What's that?
You can pull it closer.
It's,
Put the mic over the leg.
yeah, sorry about that. There we go. Can you hear me in the back? And this isn't falling over, so that's fantastic. My name is Travis Faber. I'm a candidate in the 84th House District, which is everything from Greenville north if you live in Darke County. I want to start off by thanking the League of Women Voters and Eileen and everybody who showed up here early to set this event up. Having the opportunity to speak to so many citizens at once through the camera is just a fantastic opportunity. A little bit about myself before we get into what I believe in. I'm the product of a small business household. My father was a plastering contractor. He went out and started a business when I was just a year old. And that's what I grew up in. I grew up in a small business household family. And in a small business household family, everybody's got to pitch in, everybody's got to help. So that's what I did from a very young age. But when you grow up in that kind of household, you learn very quick that decisions made by not just your father, but people in the state capitol can affect your family, can affect your company's employees, and it can even affect the community you live in. When some bureaucrat, when some politician in Columbus decides to raise taxes, decides that your family's business has to comply with a new regulation, it affects that business's ability to grow, to thrive, and to help out the community. Now, when I became an attorney, I decided I was going to help out hardworking people like my dad, small business owners, and I've devoted much of my practice to helping out people just like him, representing those companies against some of the regulators that most Republicans just pay lip service to. People like the EPA and OSHA who have wanted to come in and shut businesses down in our community. I've helped them out and I've helped them prosper. And I've developed skills and abilities that I want to take to Columbus to help those same people out, to help our communities out. Now, we have a tradition in this area of always electing strong conservative voices. I know I can be one of those voices who stands up for life, for the Second Amendment, and who stands up against big government. And I look forward to talking about those things with you tonight. Again, my name is Travis Faber. Thank you.
Aaron Heilers, 84th House District.
Well, good evening. I am Aaron Heilers and a candidate for the 84th House District. My wife Sarah and I live just outside of Anna in Shelby County, and my wife is an agricultural education teacher at Anna High School. We have 3 young boys, a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 5-month-old. We live on our farm. We have a grain operation and a wine grape vineyard, and we sell our grapes down to the winery at Versailles just outside of town here. I spent 8 years working in soil and water conservation for Auglaize and Miami counties, and for the last 3 years I have managed a statewide initiative called the Demonstration Farms. And this is a project that is putting sound science and economics behind the conservation practices that we're asking farmers to implement. And the goal is to have a positive impact on water quality all around the state of Ohio. I'm very passionate about making a positive impact on my community, and I've done that for over a decade. I started as Shelby County Farm Bureau president, and currently I am on the Shelby County Fair Board. I'm the treasurer of the Shelby County Republican Party and a member of Parish Council for Sacred Heart Catholic Church in McCartyville. I believe that we need a representative that has a deep understanding of our agricultural heritage, our agricultural economy, and the issues facing the industry here in the 84th District. 84th District is the #1 ag producing district in the state of Ohio. I think it's imperative that we have somebody that is proud to be from here, passionate to raise their children here, and passionate to be surrounded by people who share the same values that I do, values based in faith and family and in hard work. And I think it's crucial that we have somebody that has a connectedness to the community in which they wish to represent, somebody that's been a proven, respected leader already. So I'm running because I think we need more common sense, grounded, conservative individuals representing us, not people who have spent their lives aspiring to be in politics or working for candidates or elected officials, and politics is all they know. So thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you. And Susan Manchester, 84th House District.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much to the League of Women Voters for hosting this event, and thank you to all of you for attending. My name is Susan Manchester, and I grew up on my family's farm just outside of Waynesfield in Auglaize County. I went to Ohio State, and after graduating, spent a year in Venezuela doing pro-life mission work with a local orphanage. I then went to work full-time for Congressman Jim Jordan in Washington, D.C., and while in Washington, I had the opportunity to work on issues that I care about most: advocating for Ohio's agriculture industry, advancing welfare reform, and defending the right to life. I worked for one of the most conservative members of Congress at a time when we had a very liberal president, and learned how to stand up and defend your conservative values, our conservative values, in an extremely hostile environment. I then decided to move back to Ohio, where I worked on the Trump campaign. After winning that election, I took a position with Big Brothers Big Sisters, which is where I work currently. But now I'm running for state representative because throughout my life, from growing up on the family farm and attending a rural public school, to working in Washington and now being in the nonprofit sector, I've come to believe that government works best when it trusts the power of people and communities to create opportunities, stand up for each other, and look out for each other. My goal as your state representative is to get the government out of your way so that you can do what you do best. Congressman Jordan has endorsed me in this race, and I look forward to bringing his same style of bold leadership to Columbus. I'm a pro-life, pro-Second Amendment fiscal conservative who's ready to take my experience to Columbus and fight for you. Your voice is my priority. I look forward to hearing your questions tonight, and even more importantly, look forward to meeting you. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Before we begin with the questions, I failed to introduce my super screener helper here. She is just ordering the questions so that I don't get them all at once, and it makes it smoother. And one instruction I failed to say is, we really appreciate your being here, but please hold any applause or comments on any of the responses to the questions until the very end. So, thank you. All right, we'll start with our questions. We'll flip back and forth. So we'll start with the 84th. And Mr. Heilers, you will be first. The question, and this was a question for all the candidates, tell us what drives you. What are you passionate about? What motivates you?
Well, I'll have to reiterate what I said in my opening there, that what really drives me is a passion to serve the community. That's something that I've done since I came back from Ohio State. Originally from Houston in southwest Shelby County. I went to Ohio State and came back, and I've always had a passion to make a difference in the community. And I started out as a volunteer with Farm Bureau, getting engaged in the political process at the advocacy level, and have slowly built that and started a lot of organizations within Shelby County to get younger people engaged. And that's probably something that really drives me is I get tired of hearing people say that the younger generation doesn't want to get involved or doesn't want to make a difference. I guess I'm an example that I try to lead by example and get people engaged in the process. I've done that with Farm Bureau. I've done that with the Shelby County Republican Party, getting people engaged, and that really drives me.
Okay, Susan Manchester.
I'm passionate about people seeing their potential realized. I mentioned that I'm pro-life, I'm 100% pro-life, and a big driving factor behind that is because I feel that every person has something unique to offer the world, and I want to see that happen. As a state representative, I believe that you're able to take input from so many different sectors of society. You're able to see where the issues are within communities, and you're able to solve them in a way that brings people together, and that's exactly what I want to do. I work for Big Brothers Big Sisters because I care a lot about kids and kids seeing their potential realized, and I think that as state representative, you can look at what's going on in communities and with people, and from a government perspective, learn how to get government out of the way so people can reach their potential fully.
And Travis Faber.
Helping people out. That's why I became an attorney. I became an attorney because I saw people like my dad that needed help every day. As an attorney, I've worked to help people in every sector of our community, whether it's a business that needs help and protection from the government, whether it's a little old lady who's about to be evicted from her house. At the end of the day, I devote myself every waking hour to helping people. But I know as a Republican that helping people doesn't always mean giving them everything they need. Sometimes it means working to create a situation where they can be prosperous by themselves. And that's what I'll devote myself every waking hour to if I'm your state representative.
Thank you. Now moving to the 80th House District, starting with John O'Brien. Again, tell us what drives you, what are you passionate about, what motivates you?
Thanks, Eileen. I grew up in a blue-collar family in West Milton, and I learned from my parents the ethic of hard work and service to your community. I learned that through the church, and then went into the Boy Scouts when I became an Eagle Scout. Both my boys are Eagle Scouts, something I'm very proud of. But I believe in serving my community, and my wife can tell you, who's here tonight, that I work at it all the time, not just during 8 to 5. It's a 7-day-a-week thing with me, and I come up with ideas all the time that sometimes I have to have her jot down for me. So serving folks, working hard, showing up early, and staying late has always been my motto, and that's what I'll do for you in Columbus.
Thank you. Jenna Powell.
Thank you. At the basis and the heart of everything I do is my faith in Jesus Christ. Many people in today say Christian, but what I believe is that because of the work of Jesus Christ on the cross, he forgave me of my sins, and in him I have new life. So out of that heart, of a heart that loves the Lord, is a heart that wants to serve our community. And in serving our community, what we see in that is that when we can cut taxes, reduce regulation, that's a heart that says, okay, this is what's going to make our community thrive. We're going to see churches thrive, families thrive, and nonprofits thrive. So out of that heart, that's the basis of everything I do. And in of myself, I can't do anything, but it's through the work of Jesus Christ on the cross that we can have faith in life and serve our community.
Thank you. George Levitt?
Thank you. Family, community, and faith are what drive me forward. When I was working in that bait store with my parents, my two sisters were there with me. It's created a lifetime bond of closeness. So when my niece Jenny died of a heroin overdose, it blew our family apart. That is why I feel so passionately about the opioid crisis. But it's a natural outgrowth of my community service as well. Ever since I came to Tip City in 1989, I've served on nonprofit boards. You all have heard of the Mum Festival. I was president. Hope you liked it that year. And I've been very involved in my church, St. John the Baptist Catholic in Tip City. I got baptized and had my first communion when I was 40. For some reason, my mom, who was a cradle Catholic, didn't raise us in the church. But I came to the church later on, and faith is very important to me, and that's involved with everything I do.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the next question. We'll start the 80th, Jenna Powell. The question is, what could be done to improve Ohio's economy?
Definitely. So there's a saying that says, when someone from government comes and knocks on your door and says, I have a job for you, you better be nervous. Government does not create jobs, and it never has. I understand this because I am a small business owner. What we can do to help the economy in our area is we can go and look at and we can go, okay, when we reduce taxes, when we cut regulation, we're going to see small businesses thrive. If we want to see a community that thrives and the economy that's doing well, we can look at small businesses, because from there you can see thriving families, thriving churches, and thriving nonprofits. So what I will do as a state legislator is I will do everything I can to decrease the size of government and give more power back to the people and back to our community in the district.
Thank you. George Levitt?
Thank you, Eileen. What can be done to improve Ohio's economy? First of all, make government more efficient to get it smaller. We do a lot of nursing home planning in our practice, and that means when families are paying $8,000 to $9,000 a month, the family can quickly go broke paying for the care that that loved one needs. And when that happens and they have to apply for Medicaid, they apply to the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services by facsimile. By facsimile. We need to get rid of these antiquated ways of doing things to get government more efficient so it's smaller and it takes less of a tax bite. The other thing is, let's elect people who have government and business experience. I've successfully built a law firm that has 4 offices. I know how to create good paying jobs, and I've served thousands of people in our law firm. Moreover, what we also want to do is have people with some government experience. I was on council for 8 years. I was mayor of Tip City for 2 years. So I will be able to be an effective representative from the first day in Columbus.
Thank you. Moving to the 84th, we'll start with Susan Manchester. Same question. What can
Eileen.
I'm sorry.
I didn't answer that one.
Excuse me. Thank you for
No
catching
problem.
me. It's too early to mess up.
I understand. First of all, we have to reduce regulations on businesses. I have a great deal of support from folks in the chambers of commerce and manufacturing. We also need to keep reforming our workers' comp system. Businesses all over tell me how horrible it is to work with the workers' compensation system, and we need to look at lowering our taxes. But we need to look at right to work in this state. The legislature needs to pass right to work, or they need to put it on the ballot and let the citizens decide. And lastly, we need to improve our workforce development effort. Jobs go unfilled every day because we don't have workers who can fill those spots with the skill sets that are needed. So we need to make sure we work with our local communities to make sure the folks in the local communities have the skill sets and are trained to do the jobs that are open.
Thank you. I apologize.
That's all right.
Now, Susan Manchester and the 84th.
When I go around and meet folks in the district, I always ask, what do you think is the #1 issue facing Ohio? And by and large, the answers I get are jobs in the economy and the opiate epidemic. Unfortunately, we're in a situation right now where businesses are competing directly with the government for able-bodied workers. The government assistance system has been set up in a way that just makes it easier for people to be on assistance rather than to find a job and to be self-sufficient on their own. What I think needs to happen is we need to look at our government assistance programs and figure out how we can create a step-down system so that people aren't in a zero-sum game where they're choosing to live off government assistance rather than getting a job, getting a raise, and being self-sufficient on their own. I also think that right to work is critical for our economy. The majority of states that border ours have right-to-work laws in place, and for us in this district to be right next to Indiana, who has right-to-work laws, I think that that's going to cause an issue down the line. But ultimately, what we need to do too is look at workforce development.
Thank you. Travis Faber?
You know, if you look at the regulatory system we have in Ohio, if you took every regulation we had and stacked it on top of each other, it would be 7 foot tall. And that might not mean a lot to everybody here, but if you look at the states that surround us, states like Indiana and Kentucky, theirs is only about 3.5 foot tall. So businesses here in the state of Ohio have to comply with twice as many regulations as most of the states around us. And that's driving up the cost of doing business. That's driving up the cost of entering the business world. That's driving up the cost of hiring new employees. And that's putting a huge stop on our businesses. So we obviously need to look at our regulatory scheme that we have in Ohio, and we need to reform it. But the other thing we need to do is we need to make sure that the jobs that we're training people for are the jobs that we have now and the jobs we have in the future. We don't need to spend money training people in underwater basket weaving or some job that's not out there. We need to put our funds and our dollars towards the jobs that we know we need. And we need to build a workforce for the time that we have right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron Heilers?
So the 84th district, I believe, has some of the lowest unemployment rates in the state, if not the lowest unemployment rates in the state. So for us, I think the economy is doing very well. So I would circle back with what some of the other candidates said on the workforce development aspect. And we talk about that all the time, about how do we improve that workforce development. I think it needs to go into the junior high, high school level, and we really need to have a conversation about our educational process at that level. Reshaping that, catching kids at the junior high level, getting them into businesses, and getting them on a career path so that they can fill those jobs. They know what jobs are out there, and so that they can get training and develop those skills for those positions. I think we're somewhat naive in this area to think that we can continue on the path that we're continuing. Businesses will leave if we do not fill the positions that they have available. And I don't want us to look like the textile towns or the Detroits of the world if we don't fill those positions.
Thank you. The next question, I think I got everyone this time. We'll start with the 84th, Travis Faber. The question is, counties have been hit hard with the loss of revenue from the Medicare tax loss. How would you help counties recover those lost dollars?
I think what we need to look at is a total revamp of the government funding system that we have for local governments. One thing that we've seen for quite a while is that local governments effectively have to go to Columbus every 2 years and beg for more money. And what we're doing in the 84th district is we're taking money from the 84th district away from our local communities. We're sending it to Columbus, and then we're writing them a check back. That's a system that's broken, because what happens is we send money from the 84th district to Columbus. There's a handling fee, and then a lot of our money goes to Cleveland, it goes to Cincinnati, and it goes to Columbus proper to pay for their projects. What we need to do is we need to keep that money locally. We need to allow the local communities, the local counties to keep the money that they raise. And no, don't worry about it. Sorry about that. We need to allow them to keep the money that they raise here locally, and that will allow them to pay their bills and make up for those lost incomes.
Thank you. Aaron Heilers?
I believe decisions are best made at the local level by your local school board, your county commissioners, within your church or within your own home. Local decisions are the best decisions. So when it comes to the local government fund and what has been happening under the Kasich administration, and frankly before that, it's always been a struggle to maintain that balance, and I think we really do need to look at that formula and get it more in balance so that it is a shared enterprise. Shared sacrifices when times are bad, shared gains when times are good, so that local communities that do the critical things that we all see every day have the resources to continue to function.
Thank you. Susan Manchester?
One county commissioner that I spoke with recently described the relationship between county funding and state funding as a master-slave relationship, and I don't think that that's helpful to anyone. Unfortunately, local governments have suffered under the policies of the Kasich administration, and I think it's critical that we pedal back on those policies and examine where we can cut spending elsewhere. As many folks would say up here tonight, we don't have a revenue problem in this state, we have a spending problem. And I think if you examine the state departments, the state bureaucracies, and figured out where we could make cuts there, there would be a lot more money available because, again, money at the local level is well spent. People have more control over where it's going, what it's doing, and frankly, people like to be able to drive on nice roads and walk on nice sidewalks and see their tax dollars at work in that way.
Again, the question, counties have been hit hard with the loss of revenue from the Medicare tax loss. How would you help counties recover those lost dollars? George Lovett, we'll start with you.
Thanks for repeating the question. Thanks, Bud. I thought that was about Medicare. Medicare is a federal controlled program. And basically the dollars are 65% from the feds, 35% from the state of Ohio. And Medicare, as originally conceived, is a pretty good idea. It's privately obtained health and, well, it's publicly provided health insurance, but the idea behind it is we're going to help senior citizens get the health care coverage they need. Over the years, more regulations have been attached to it, and the problem is it's becoming increasingly expensive, and the feds keep lobbing on more and more regulations that makes it more difficult to comply. The solution here is more consumerism. We need to get government less involved in it. We've got to create opportunities for people to be consumers of their own health care and get the costs down, get the taxes down, get the regulations down, and once you get government more out of the process, then you're going to start seeing things improve.
Thank you. John O'Brien.
The Medicare services reduction was from a part, it was part of the sales tax that you all pay. And in Miami County alone, that reduction that we lost was $850,000. That's a lot, but like Travis talked about, there's been a war on local government since the Kasich administration took over. When the government had, the state government had a huge hole in their budget, they balanced that budget on the backs of local government. They reduced our local government funding by $800 to $1 million, depending on the year. That has to stop. The state needs to start giving back to the local governments like they should. The state, when they had their Medicare cut for the sales tax, they were $1 billion in the hole. They made themselves whole in the last state budget, but not local governments. I think that's outrageous. So I would work with County Commissioners Association of Ohio. I think they have a good plan on how to bring that money back to the counties because counties get hit all the time with reductions from the state, so the state can balance their budget.
Thank you. And now Jenna Powell.
So this is what happens when government becomes too big. So we have federal government, we have state government, and we have local. And what happens is when someone says, hey, and from the government, I can come save you, what happens is you're getting more power, more regulations, and more taxes on us people. So what's happening is, Donald Trump is giving more power on a federal back to the state, which is what should happen because federal government has become something that it never should have been. And so what we need to do if I get into the state legislature is if elected, I'll go in and I'll give more power from the state back to the local. So that decisions can be made more on a local level instead of from someone in Columbus or in Washington, D.C.
Thank you. All right, now we're going to start with the 80th House District. The next question, what specific revenue increases would you support and what cuts would you make to balance Ohio's budget? And we'll start with John O'Brien.
Well, I'm definitely not in favor of raising any taxes. The state of Ohio has had a surplus every year since the recession, and they did that through taking monies from the locals. It's time for the state to start giving some of that money back that they have in their gigantic rainy day fund back to the locals because local government is where the rubber meets the road. They're the ones who provide you all with the services. As county commissioner, I've seen that for the last 12 years. Anytime that process goes up, it works worse. George talked about Job and Family Services a little earlier, and over Job and Family Services are underneath the county commission. The state's forcing us to go where people from Miami County who used to be able to call the JFS will now get a call center. They might get somebody in Adams County. Those are the kind of things that are ridiculous. And if I'm in the state legislature, I'll fight against. So in my opinion, we don't need to raise any taxes. There's already enough taxes.
Thank you, Jenna Powell.
Can you ask the question one more time? I'm sorry.
Yes. What specific revenue increases would you support and what cuts would you make to balance Ohio's budget?
Thank you. To begin with, I do not support any increase in taxes. We have enough taxes. I know because I'm working on hiring as a business owner. I'm hiring new employees, and I sit down and I figure out, okay, what am I going to pay them? And then on top of that, I add in all of my taxes, all of their taxes, and then the health care on top of that. And it's very expensive and very hard to run a company in the regulatory and tax environment that we're in. What I would look at in the state legislature to begin with is look at our Medicaid expansion. That's something that is bankrupting the state of Ohio thanks to John Kasich. So that's something that I think we need to freeze, we need to look at, and we need to get the healthcare system back to a free market. That's going to lower the cost to consumers, and it's going to be a huge advantage to business owners and consumers alike here in our community.
Thank you. George Levitt?
Thanks. Well, right now, the state of Ohio is doing pretty well economically, so there's no need to bring in more revenue. Increasing taxes always needs to be the last alternative, and right now, while things are good, obviously it's not an issue. If we do face a recession, and you know it's coming again, what you do is look at keep the essentials going, and you look harder now, while times are good, at trying to improve government's efficiency. And once again, I come back to the facsimile example. It's not just the state of Ohio. The VA requires an application by facsimile too. There is a mentality that we're not going to improve things as rapidly as possible. We're not going to push things as rapidly as possible while it's good. The time to work on avoiding a tax increase during a recession is now while times are healthy. Let's make an investment in getting our technology better. Let's make it more efficient. Let's get our costs down. Let's get our taxes down while we're doing it. So when the next recession does hit, now we're going to be better prepared to handle it and not have to look at any revenue increases.
Thank you. Now moving to the 84th again. What specific revenue increases would you support and what cuts would you make to balance Ohio's budget? Mr. Heilers.
Yeah, so I think we're all going to be in agreement on the revenue side of things, that there shouldn't be an increase. We've got, as Susan said, we don't have a revenue problem in the state of Ohio. We have a spending problem. Medicaid expansion would be number one. And I say that from obviously the financial side of things. Unfortunately, Republicans are their own worst enemy when it comes to this, whether it's state budget or Medicaid expansion or local government funds. We continue to shoot ourselves in the foot and not do I think what we stand for as conservatives, and we increase those programs. Governor Kasich has said that he has reduced taxes, but what he's done in reality is reduce taxes here and slide in a fee or something else over here that you don't see, and I think that's the wrong-headed approach.
Thank you. Susan Manchester.
The vast majority of our budget in Ohio pays for healthcare and education, and obviously those two things are very important to the future of our state. Medicaid expansion, however, has increased costs at an insurmountable level, and something needs to be done so that we don't continue on this path. As I mentioned earlier, I think what we need to propose is a step-down system for government assistance programs so that we not only save our state money in the long term by helping people get on the path to self-sufficiency for good, but also so that we can address some cuts in spending. I think that our state will save a lot more money if we can get more people working in the workforce on the path to self-sufficiency without government assistance.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Faber?
So there were two questions there, and I think we should start off with the first one. Well, I don't want to increase spending. What I'd like to see is us redirect some funds into drug prevention education for young people. Because at the end of the day, we know, and our sheriffs will tell us, that spending $1 a day on drug prevention will save us hundreds of dollars in the court systems and in legal fees later. What we do need to do, and everybody up here I think has reiterated this point, is look at Medicaid expansion. Right now, Medicaid is 50% of our state budget. That means for every dollar the state spends, 50% of it, 50 cents of it, goes to Medicaid. It right now is going to break our budget. It increased in the last budget our entire state budget by 3.5% just by itself. Another thing we need to do is we need to look at sunsetting state agencies that have outlived their usefulness. The legislature actually passed a bill that would force state agencies to come in and justify their continued existence. And Governor Kasich, in his infinite wisdom, decided to veto that bill, which I think was a huge mistake. So we need to look at that again, because if we can save just 1% of our expenditures statewide, we would save $1.4 billion a year. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next question, we'll start with the 84th House District. How will President Trump's trade tariffs with China affect our Ohio farmers? And what can the state do as a matter of policy to help our farmers? We start with Susan Manchester.
Yes, well, when President Trump announced his tariffs on the steel trade, I and many others in the farming community were very concerned about how it might trickle down, and unfortunately, we're seeing that happen. We export a vast majority of our agriculture output, and so it's critical that we don't do anything to make that more expensive to do. When it comes to the future of farming, I think people's biggest concerns are if we will have the amount of people needed to sustain our agriculture industry as it is right now. And what I would like to see happen is develop a tax credit system for older, retiring farmers who are getting out of the business to rent out their machinery and equipment and even rent out their land to young farmers who want to get in. Unfortunately, right now, the barriers to entry for young farmers are extremely costly, and so I would like to do something at the state level to address that via tax credits.
Thank you. Travis Faber, you're next.
Yeah, so it's very unfortunate that after the Trump administration passed their tariffs, China responded by targeting specific areas of our economy tied to different congressional members that they thought could lean on the president. Farming and agriculture specifically was targeted, the pork industry was targeted because of this area, because we're strong in agriculture and because we have strong members of Congress who have been able to go to Washington, D.C. and advocate for us. So the Chinese literally targeted this area with their tariffs. We do, however, need to lean on the president and help him to negotiate with countries like China. We can do that through our congressional delegation, and we need to do this because we're seeing the effect already, not just on our steel industry, and I represent some local steel companies, but also on our agricultural community with their prices going up, with their long-term expenditures going up, with their long-term planning affecting the way their business can grow and thrive.
Thank you. Aaron Heilers.
Yeah, so a quick story. As a farmer, a small grain farmer in Shelby County, right before Easter, I hadn't been paying attention to the markets much in the midst of the campaign, and my family said, boy, things really went up here. You need to look at it. So I sold grain that next day. And the next day after that, I think it was a Tuesday, maybe a Wednesday, was when China announced their tariffs, and the market plummeted like 40 cents that day. So better to be good or lucky than good on that. But that has a real significant impact on Ohio's farmers. We rely on those export markets for the success of our farming operations. What we can do as Ohio legislators is be a stronger voice to the federal level. To the administration, to our congressional delegation, to our trade representatives. We have great organizations. I was involved with Farm Bureau for many years doing that, but how nice would it be to have a group of state legislators go together and team up with organizations like that and say, enough's enough.
Thank you. And now to the 80th, repeating the question, how will President Trump's trade tariffs with China affect our Ohio farmers? And what can the state do as a matter of policy to help our farmers? And this time we're starting with, Jenna Powell.
Okay, thank you guys. So to begin with, when it comes to tariffs, my business is in the business that we buy a lot of steel. The tariffs that Trump put on steel highly affected what we did. I mean, overnight, it was crazy, the increase in cost and what it did. When I look at what Trump does, I just hope that he has the art of the deal in mind of the long term, and it's going to be best for our community and what's going on. When it comes to farming, my grandfather has farmed the same land for over 60 years. My dad farms over 2,000 acres in this area, and now my brother farms. If we look over, talking to my grandfather, my father, we just talked about this last week, looking at the farming and agriculture industry, it has changed so much over the last 50 years. Barely recognizable from 50 years ago. when we look at it, we see that the government has stepped in so many ways that I think everyone would agree that understands farming. It doesn't look the same. What we need in the state legislature is someone that's going to go in and that's going to be able to talk on a state level, on a local level, and on a federal level. I've talked to different people at the Farm Bureau, and we need to work together to create a solution so that agriculture can sustain itself in our community.
Now George Levitt.
Well, look around the pictures of this hall. These are all people who fought in foreign wars. Trade wars helped bring us World War II. When you start making it more expensive to sell your goods to other countries, the other countries take retaliatory action. Now granted, that isn't the only thing that brought us Hitler. It's not the only thing that brought us Tojo. But if we go back to this style of policy, we risk that danger. We don't want to see our sons, our daughters, the people we love, go and fight in foreign wars. This is a dangerous path to follow. What can we do in Ohio? This doesn't only adversely affect farmers, it's the rest of us, because agribusiness is huge around here. If a farmer goes and has problems, then those who supply him goods and services are also going to have problems. What we need to do is let the federal authorities who control this know our concerns. We need to get behind our Representative Warren Davidson, who is making known his concerns with this, and we need to broadcast our concerns as well.
Mr. O'Brien.
Trump's trade tariffs, we need to watch it. We can't overreact at the initial phase of it. We have to see how it plays out. And we'll see that. When it comes to farming, I have lots of friends in the farming industry, and usually when I ask them, what do you want your state government to do for you, they say two things. One, get out of our way, and number two, don't mess with CAUV. As a county commissioner, we hear about CAUV all the time. When you hear the legislature bring it up that they want to possibly change how it works, the farmers do a lot of lobbying with the county government to make sure we lobby the state legislature that it doesn't happen. So in Miami County, farming's big, not as big as it is in Darke County, but it's very big. So we work with that all the time. And when I'm a state representative, CAUV changes will not be on the table for me. So I'm a member of the Ohio Farm Bureau, have been for years, so I look forward to working with them in Columbus.
Thank you. The next question, what will your top 3 priorities be while in office? Starting with the 80th, George Levitt.
Thank you, Eileen. Top 3 priorities have to be working on the opioid crisis, getting down the cost of government, and working on education. Let's talk about opioids first. Unfortunately, once again, there's a strong federal component here. This stuff's coming up through Mexico. It's not necessarily beating on immigrants, and everybody in this room has come from immigrants in one form or another. It's not anti-immigrant to point at Mexico and say, we've got a problem coming up from Mexico. Cocaine's going west, heroin and that kind of stuff is coming east, and it's what's making it cheap and plentiful. We need to work on that. One Wellness Place, the initiative we've got in Miami County to put under one roof the services addicts need and to drive down costs doing it is going to be an effective start. The next thing is education policy. Not all youngsters can go to college. We need to work harder at an earlier age identifying those youngsters who need training for jobs that are going unfilled right now. And finally, and lastly, I've said it several times, we need to work harder to make government more efficient, to make it less costly and get the tax burden down.
Thank you. John O'Brien.
First of all, the number one thing I want to work on, Ohio's economy has recovered since the recession, but it's lagged the national recovery. So we need to work on getting jobs and having jobs in the 8th district and the community. We also need to work on workforce development for those jobs I talked about prior that go unfilled every day. My wife is a second grade teacher in the Tip City School District. It's her 32nd year teaching. I've watched her job change drastically over that 32 years. We need to get the state of Ohio out of trying to control what they tell our teachers to teach. We need to put that back into the local districts with the school districts, the administrators, the teachers, and the parents. The federal government and the state government needs to get out of our local schools. When the locals control it, it'll be way better. Lastly, I'm going to bring some conservative principles to the state. I want lower taxes and smaller government. I've made county government more efficient. I want to bring that experience to the state level and help out make the state government become more efficient. I'm conservative, I'm pro-Second Amendment, and I'm pro-life, and I'm endorsed by a higher right to life. And that's what I'll do when I'm in Columbus, and that's my top 3 priorities.
Okay, thank you. Jenna Powell.
Awesome. So to begin with, we have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So at the very basis, we have to fight for life from conception to natural death. I was endorsed by Ohio Right to Life and Ohio Right to Life Action Coalition. That's a basis of what we need to fight for. Secondly, we need to fight to cut taxes and to reduce regulation. What that will do for our community is we have different problems. You know, we have jobs. We want to bring great jobs back. By cutting taxes and cutting regulations, we'll do that. Secondly, we need to help fight the opioid crisis. To do that, I believe that we can see that another government-run program is not the solution. But when we can bring more money into our community, we'll be able to give to nonprofits that will fight against that. Another thing will be protecting our Second Amendment right. That's a big thing, and what we'll do is we'll fight on a state level to do that here in our community.
Thank you. Now starting in the 84th, again, your top 3 priorities. Travis Faber.
Well, I get to these real quick. Life, the Second Amendment, and the economy. Expanding on those things, though, life is obviously one of the most important things that we as a legislature can stand up and defend, and we've seen steps to do that. I spoke to a pro-life group the other day, and I said this is an exciting time for the life movement because we're just one Supreme Court justice away from overturning Roe v. Wade. On the Second Amendment, we've seen the governor recently put forward a proposal that would curtail our Second Amendment rights. We as a legislature need to stand up and we need to stop gun grabbers like John Kasich when they come in. The third thing, the economy, and I think everybody up here said it before, but we need to get government out of the way of business here in Ohio. We have the lowest unemployment rate in the entire state, but we're never more than just a few bad years away from decades of a bad economic environment in our district. And so we don't need to sit on our laurels. We need to do everything we can to step up and make sure that government isn't holding our local business owners back. Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron Heilers.
So I've been focusing the entire year that I've been running on 3 things: preserving our agricultural heritage, protecting our rights, and promoting the 84th district. I believe our job as elected officials is to create a structure that's going to allow our agricultural industry to continue to thrive, to continue to adapt to the changing demands of consumers and the environmental demands that the public places on us with the water quality issues that we have. I think protecting our rights is the most fundamental function of government. That's what we're there for. So protecting life, I'm 100% pro-life. Protecting our Second Amendment, making sure that government is not infringing upon those God-given rights. And lastly, promoting the 84th district. We live in the greatest district in the state of Ohio, and I think we need to be promoting that. We should be a model for the rest of the state on how to lead our lives and lead our communities instead of the other way around, where mandates are placed upon us and as we try to bring up other areas of the state.
Thank you. Susan Manchester.
I'm focused on the issues that are most important to you because I believe that your voice, your values, and your experiences matter. And I will defend the right to life. I'm 100% pro-life. I'll defend our Second Amendment liberties. I'm 100% pro-Second Amendment. And when I ask people what they think is the most important issues facing Ohio right now, they do say workforce development and the opiate epidemic. I think both of those things go hand in hand. I've heard from a lot of business owners about how they can't find workers who can pass a drug test, and they're also having difficulty finding workers who will sustain a job. I think that those things are going to be a #1 priority for our future as a state. And when it comes to spending your tax dollars wisely, I want to look at how we can look to the future and have a future-oriented approach so that we're investing in people and places now so that we can have a more productive, better, successful Ohio in the future.
Thank you. Okay, we'll start with the next question. Starting with the 84th, Aaron Heilers, the first question. Are there some limits to the Second Amendment that you can support?
No, not anything that's already in place, and I think some of what's already in place might be a step too far. As I said, government's job is to protect the rights that we've been given, and the Second Amendment, unfortunately with the unfortunate incidents of school shootings and mass shootings, it always goes back to the same narrative of restricting rights further and further. And I think we need to change that discussion around and go more on the offensive when talking about why the Second Amendment is important to us. Because we can only look to history, look at other countries when they disarm their citizens. It's not too long after that they start to come after your other rights, like your right to free speech. And I know that sounds wild-eyed and crazy, but in reality, I mean, that is why we were given the Second Amendment, was to protect ourselves from an unruly government.
Susan Manchester?
I'm 100% pro Second Amendment, no exceptions. I received an A rating from the NRA, and as Aaron mentioned, unfortunately in this time we have seen our liberties come under attack. And I think it's important to examine why these things are going on. When I see a child who wants to enter his school building and shoot his classmates, friends, and teachers, I see a child who's in a lot of pain. And so I think it's critical that we address the mental health issues that our kids are facing. And I believe that there is an opportunity for us to look at that from a state perspective. When it comes to safety in the schools, I know that schools have taken a different approach across the state. My home school district of Waynesfield-Goshen has actually allowed for armed staff, but that was a decision made at the local level, and I think it should stay that way. So it's critical that we protect our Second Amendment liberties, that we don't restrict any kind of gun rights, but that we also examine why these situations are happening and how we can address them at the root.
Thank you. Back to the 80th House District. Oh, excuse me, Travis, I did that again. Sorry.
You know, I don't think we need to look any further than Chicago to know curtails on the Second Amendment don't help save lives. At the end of the day, the thing I always remember is that making good people helpless doesn't make bad people harmless. At the end of the day, what we need to do is we need to look at those things that can actually help people who, like Susan said, want to go into school and hurt people. Things like looking at the violence problem that we have within our society, the disrespect for life that we have within our society. These are things that lead people to think it's okay to take a gun and hurt somebody else, or take a knife, or take a baseball bat, or take any weapon and hurt someone else. Taking the rights away from our citizens isn't the way to do that. That's why I've been endorsed by Buckeye Firearms. That's why I've been endorsed by Ohioans for concealed carry, and why I have an A rating for the NRA. And I will always stand up for our Second Amendment rights.
Thank you. Now, the 80th House District. John O'Brien, again, are there some limits to the Second Amendment that you can support?
The quick answer to that is no. I'm a lifetime member of the NRA. I'm A-rated by the NRA. I believe I will never, ever support anything that keeps a law-abiding citizen from having a firearm. It's that simple, folks.
Thank you. Jenna Powell?
No limits. I grew up shooting guns with my dad and my brothers on our farm. What we understand is that, you know, protecting your Second Amendment rights is constitutional. But what we also see from that is that, you know, in the Constitution, it specifically says that if the government gets too big and tries to take away our freedoms and liberties, then we're able to have guns to fight against that, to protect our First Amendment, which is the freedom of speech. I was rated A from the NRA. I've been endorsed by Ohioans for concealed carry, been endorsed by Buckeye Firearms Association. I have my CCW, and I will always fight and stand for your Second Amendment rights.
Thank you. And George Levitt?
Thanks. No, there's no limits to the Second Amendment I can support. Keep in mind, I grew up in a bait store. We sold guns. Guns and ammo is what I also sold to help pay my way through college. I may have been in more gun stores than all of you in this room. I grew up with this. It's part of my heritage. I shot and owned firearms since before I had a driver's license. Whenever people talk about the Second Amendment, usually what they're really talking about when they want to put limits on it is they want to politicize the process, and effective solutions here are going to have to be outside of politics. What does the country of Israel do? They have an extremely high percentage of ownership and usage of firearms, yet they don't have the problems of public shootings that we do. Let's look at it objectively and see what they're doing. We're all familiar with the slogan, going postal. When's the last time you've heard of a U.S. postal employee going into the workplace and using firearms to brutalize people? You don't. What have they done? Let's look at these and other concrete examples to see what we can really do to address the problem.
Okay, well, I don't think there'll be any rebuttals from anybody with that question. All right, we're at the time in our evening for the 1-minute closing statements, and then we'll ask ask you to remain here while we have our candidates who are going to just do their introductions. So this time we're starting with the 80th House District, Jenna Powell.
Awesome. Well, first off, thank you guys all so much for coming out tonight. It is awesome to be here. If you are looking to vote for someone that's going to go Columbus and just continue with the status quo, then don't vote for me. But if you're looking for someone to go to Columbus and to fight for your Second Amendment rights, to fight for life from conception to natural death, to fight to lower taxes and to reduce regulation, then I would be honored for your vote and your support for Jenna Powell on May 8th. Thank you.
Thank you. George Lovett.
Thanks, Eileen, and once again, thanks for putting this event together. Thanks for y'all coming here this evening. I've endorsed by Ohio Right to Life. I'm obviously pro-Second Amendment, and I've gone on, probably boring you all to tears, about how I want to make government more efficient, to make it smaller and get our tax bill down. I've served on many nonprofits to make our community a better place to live and work. I've been a successful businessman. I know how to create good paying jobs, and I've served in government. I was a mayor. I was on city council for 8 years. I've got the right resume. I've got the right attitude to do a good job for you from the very first day of Columbus. And my attitude is faith and hard work. I believe that the Lord put us all here. All life is precious, and that includes you and me as adults. We need to treat each other with respect and dignity. We also need to work harder to do more with the dollars we already have. That is what I stand for, faith and hard work. These are our shared values. I want to take those values to Columbus to do the best job possible for you as your state rep. Thank you very much.
Thank you. John O'Brien.
Folks, it's easy to get up here and talk about conservative talking points and Fox News talking points, but it's harder when you actually have to do the job. And I've done it as a county commissioner for the last 12 years. There's people in Columbus who don't want me over there, high-paid political consultants and power bosses, and they're exposing out there negative things about me that just aren't true. Don't believe it. It wasn't true 4 years ago. It wasn't true then if you've gotten mail about me. Why else would people like Jim Beakey endorse me? People like Dick Adams, who represent the 80th House District, and the current legislative folks representing us, Bill Beagle and Steve Huffman. They all know me. They know what I'll do when I go to Columbus. I'll be no one's puppet in Columbus. I will be there to represent you, represent your values and my values. Folks, I respectfully ask for your vote on May 8th in the Republican primary. If you want to learn more about me, go to electobrien.com. I want to thank you all for coming out. Eileen, for having this process. I think it's awesome. And I think it's great to have all you out here tonight. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And now the 84th, we'll start with Susan Manchester.
Well, thank you again for coming tonight. Thank you for your questions. It has been an honor and a privilege meeting folks across the 84th House District. Your passion and enthusiasm for your hometowns and home counties is undeniable. We have something really special going on here in West Central Ohio. We have the lowest unemployment rates in the state, thousands of jobs available. And I want to go to Columbus and be your voice so that we can get government out of your way for you to continue doing what you do best, making your communities thrive, standing up for each other, and looking out for each other. I'm pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, fiscal conservative. I've been endorsed by Congressman Jordan. I've stood shoulder to shoulder with Congressman Jordan to advance conservative legislation in Washington, and I believe that I have the ability and the experience to get things done and the energy to see the challenges through. My name is Susan Manchester, and I ask for your vote on May 8th. Thank you.
And Travis Faber.
And by the end, we will have figured this microphone out.
You
know, I think she's got to start my time. When I've been going around the 84th District and talking to people, I've been talking about the struggle that's going on in Columbus and in our state right now. It's a struggle between two groups of people. One group of people who sees big government as the solution to all of our problems. They want to regulate everything we do, from the way we operate our businesses to the way we raise our families, even to the way we practice our faith. And then on the other side of the struggle, we've had a group of people that have been able to stand up and say no. No, government isn't the solution to our problems. Regulating our lives and giving up our freedoms, that's not how we get to where we need to be. These strong conservative voices from right here in the 84th District have been able to stand up and push our entire state down a conservative path, a path that we know we need to be on. Now, I'm running for state representative because I know I can be one of those conservative voices, one of those voices who will stand up for the Second Amendment, one of those voices who will always stand up for life, and one of those voices who will go to Columbus and say, no, government is not the solution to our problems. We need to reduce the size of government. We need to give freedom back to our local communities, to our local schools, and to our local families. Now, I'd appreciate your vote. Again, my name is Travis Faber. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Aaron Heilers.
Well, thank you again for having this event. I would ask you, when you're evaluating the race for the 84th District, that you do something for me. I would ask you to look beyond the political connections, look beyond the last names, and look beyond who people have worked for, and judge each candidate on what they bring to the table individually. Judge us on our merits, on our backgrounds, on our level of knowledge of the issues, on our commitment to the community, and judge us on our experience. I haven't been an elected official before, and I don't plan to be a career politician. I'm simply somebody that wants to serve all of us as our representative. So as a husband, as a father, as a farmer, and as a lifelong invested member of the 84th District, I will be the voice of the 84th District in Columbus, not be the voice of Columbus in the 84th District. I'm Aaron Heilers, and I'm asking for your vote on May 8th, and thank you.
Let's give all of our candidates here a round of applause. I just ask you to remain seated for a few minutes while we do our other introductions. We have about 10 more questions here. I'm sorry we could not get to them all, and so I really encourage you to mingle and ask the questions directly of the candidates in just a few minutes. At this time, we're going to call up the Mike Stiegel. At this point, we have anyone who is a contested candidate who would like may have up to 2 minutes for an introduction, and then we will have the 3 Democratic candidates for the 8th Congressional District have a chance to introduce themselves.
Well, I'd also like to thank the League of Women Voters for this event tonight. I think it's a very good event, and I will tell you this, I've met all these people. We're not going to go wrong, whoever we elect up here. These are all good folks, and I like all of them. And I might have to work with them someday, so keep that in mind. I've been your commissioner now for 8 years. In the last 8 years, I think you know what's happened here in Darke County. We've had one heck of a good run. And that's not by accident, that's been by design. Right now in Darke County, we have some of the best elected officials and best people working here that we've ever had. And the best part is we work together as a team. When I was first elected, I promised to do 3 things: economic development, economic cooperation, and if it's broke, fix it. That's what we've done for the last 8 years. I see absolutely no reason to change that. My opponent chose not to show up tonight. That's unfortunate, because you have no idea what he wants to do, because I don't either, because he's never said anything. I'm telling you what I want to do. I want to stay on the same path we are now. Why change something that isn't broken? I'm going to be watching for the next 4 or 5 years, because sooner or later we're going to have a downturn. Right now in our office, we are preparing for that downturn. We're looking at where we can cut, what we can do, where we can slow things down. That's called being a good commissioner. And I can't do it alone. I do it because we got great people. The best people in West Central Ohio. This area is known throughout the state. Why do we want to change that? So when you go to the polls May the 8th, and November the 8th, whatever. When you go, think about what's happened here in Darke County so far. Our people are doing the job, and I want to be a part of that team. I'd like to stay there, and I would appreciate your vote on May the 8th. God bless you all, and thank you all very much. And remember, the people you vote for up here, I'm going to have to deal with.
The next candidate is, thank you, please hold your applause till they're all finished, thank you. Dr. Vanessa Enoch, Democratic candidate for the 8th Congressional District in the primary.
Cut her foot very bad.
Sorry, it took me a little longer to get up here. I had a small injury on the way up here trying to put a yard sign in. Anyway, again, my name is Dr. Vanessa Enoch. I've been a resident of the 8th District in Westchester, Ohio for the past 15 years. I'm also a Buckeye, born and bred. I own a management company, and we also do public policy analysis. I grew up in a family where I learned good Christian values such as love your neighbor as you love yourself and do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I'm a first-generation college graduate, and with the loss of my husband in 2009, as a single mother, I put one daughter through college, and I have one to go next year. I understand the real struggles of working families, especially as it relates to the cost of preparing our children for a productive future. My legislative priorities are education from preschool to college, healthcare, economic development, and job growth. The cost of education is already through the roof, and this current administration is trying to make it harder for our children and children from working families to attain an education. Our current Congress is similarly attacking public education for grades K through 12. I've lived in third world countries in Africa, and I can tell you that when there is no public education, it is the girls that suffer. I'm running for US Congress because I want to give voters a choice for real change this year. There's never been a woman representing the 8th District in US Congress, and the lack of women's representation is a significant problem, because the fact of the matter is, when there is substantive women's representation, women's legislation that supports women and children is passed. Last year alone, numerous bills that were introduced to support women and children never made it to the floor for a vote. My name again is Dr. Vanessa Enoch, and I'm asking for your vote on May 8th. You can learn more about my campaign and donate at enochforcongress.com. Thank you again.
And now, Matthew Guyette, again, 8th Democratic candidate for the 8th Congressional District.
Good evening, Greenville. My name's Matt Guyette. I'm running for Congress. Grew up in a small town in northern Connecticut. My parents had a small business. My dad made furniture and my mom ran the store. So growing up with that experience gave me a real appreciation for personal responsibility, duty, doing the right thing. In fact, I think some of the things that motivate me are personal responsibility, family values, fiscal restraint, law and order, and free markets. And that's, of course, why I'm running as a Democrat. That was a joke for you guys. On the topic of abortion, as a Catholic, I find abortion really abhorrent. But I think my approach is different from my colleagues over here. They want to use big government to prevent people from having an abortion once they're already pregnant. My approach is to make contraception possible, sex education, to make sure there are homes available for children to be adopted if the mother wants to give them up. I think as far as fiscal restraint and law and order, all you have to do is look at Washington, D.C. to know that we're headed in the wrong direction. We have a bloated federal budget that was just passed by Republicans in the House and signed by Donald Trump, ensuring trillion-dollar deficits every year into the foreseeable future. As far as jobs, I think we're on the right track here, but we need to make sure that we have good paying jobs here in this country. What's happened since 1980, a lot of the good paying jobs have moved overseas. And while unemployment's very low right now, a lot of those jobs don't pay very much and some of them don't have any benefits. I'm completely against privatization of schools or privatization of the VA. I think robbing those important institutions so that people can make money off the government is the wrong direction to take. My name is Matt Guyette. My website is guyetteforcongress.com, and I hope you'll remember me when you go to vote. Thank you.
And our third Democratic candidate for the 8th Congressional District, Ted Jones.
Well, thank you all for being here tonight. Yes, I'm one of the Jones boys. I live in just on the other side of Pickles, so I'm next to Matthew. I'm probably one of the more local people here. We're faced with a lot of issues, but I firmly believe that we can solve them, and solve them together. I've had a career in manufacturing that spans 35 years of progressive leadership in organized labor and positions that have led to senior management levels in the companies that I worked for or managed. I know how to run a business, and I know how to bring people together, to solve problems, and to get things done. I have an appreciation for when they say about efficiencies in government and in business, because that is the thrust of what all business owners do. They look for where the inefficiencies are and cut them out, because they go directly to the bottom of the bottom line. Am I right? So Republicans and Democrats can agree on something. I'm a military veteran. I served in 4 years of active duty in the United States Coast Guard. I graduated from Penn State University's Industrial Management Program and attended Defiance College in Defiance, Ohio. When I talk with people in the district, I hear concerns and identify frustrations. What people are asking for is change and a little bit better representation in Congress. And if elected, I intend to provide it. One day we will all face realities of dealing with healthcare costs. But I believe that we can make improvements in our healthcare system that will benefit all. We can overcome our opioid and heroin epidemic that's ravaging our district, and I believe that we can find workable solutions on gun violence. Again, my name is Ted Jones, and I thank you very much for being here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming and for submitting your questions, and I apologize if yours did not get asked. But again, please ask the candidates afterwards. Again, thanks to Bach to Rock for the sound system, even the sound system that was falling over. The American Legion for use of their facility, Business and Professional Women's for providing the runners and all of the league members for their job, and Greenville Public Access TV and our high school student for recording it, and Greenville Police Department for having a presence here. This program will be broadcast on Channel 5, and we will put it in the local media 13 different times, starting on April 29th for that whole week. 13 different time slots, and we have those here, but I will get those to the paper. And we hope everyone drives safely and votes on May 8th. Thank you very much.